So, I'm in college, and I live in a house with 10 roommates. This story took place during the summer break of last year. Instead of going back home for the summer, I decided to stay at the house since I didn't really like living at home. It's a decently sized 2-story house, nothing crazy. It does, however, get pretty clustered during school since everyone's living there at the same time, but last summer was nice because 5 of my roommates drove back home. That left us with 5 people living in the house: Jared, Michael, Will, Dustin, and myself. I shared the basement with 4 other people during the school year, but now it was just me and Dustin. The rest all had their own rooms upstairs, being that they're the ones who pay the most in rent. The basement is 2 rooms, so I at least had my own personal space for the time being. I took the main room, where we have a TV, couch, pong table, and a pool table. It was kind of the main area where we'd have our parties, between that and the main floor. We had to make a frat recruitment video to send into the school. We had completely forgotten to do this before the other 5 went home, so we had to take care of it. Jared has a really nice video camera, so we used that to make the film. We pretty much just gave a tour of the house and introduced ourselves, so the whole thing only took about a half hour. By then, it was around midnight, so I headed down to my room to go to bed. Within seconds of my head hitting the couch pillow, I heard the doorbell ring upstairs. I listened in the dark as I heard footsteps above me going to the door. I texted everyone in the group chat asking who was there, and Jared replied, saying that we got ding-dong ditched. We have a bunch of other friends in the area, so I didn't give it much thought at all. As soon as I got up to put my phone on the charger and go to sleep, I spotted someone walking past the basement window. Being in the basement, I was only able to briefly see their legs and feet, but there was no way I could tell who it was. Again, I texted in the group chat saying that someone was walking around in our backyard, and they told me to come up so we could go out and see. I ran up the stairs and put on my slides, then all 5 of us walked out to see who it was. After scanning the entire property, it was apparent that no one was there, so we all went back inside and pretty much forgot about it. I went back down in the basement and fell asleep shortly after. The next day, I was in the kitchen making breakfast when I heard Jared screaming for us to come check something out. We all went upstairs to his room and huddled around him at his desk. He seemed visibly shaken up, but none of us knew why. He was sitting at his computer with the video camera hooked up, which meant he was working on editing the video we made. I vividly remember him having this wide-eyed look on his face, and I soon found out why. All he said was, "Watch this." He pressed play, and at first, I had no idea what was going on. It was a still shot video of our kitchen. All the lights were off, so everything looked a bit shadowy, so we all kind of stood around him in confusion. That's when Jared finally started to tell us why he called us up. After we finished recording last night, I forgot to turn off the camera, so it recorded the entire night. Still not having any clue as to why this was relevant, I noticed movement on the feed, and my jaw dropped. Although faint, I heard the sound of the front door quietly opening, then shutting. Seconds later, a figure emerged out of the front hallway, and it started approaching. Again, with it being dark, it was impossible to make out who it was. The figure slowly paced around the kitchen, going through cabinets and drawers, before walking out of frame. Now, I was sitting there thinking he was playing a stupid prank on us, so I remember saying something like, "Nice try." Jared turned his head around and looked directly towards me, and with the most serious expression I've ever seen on his face, he said, "Dude, that wasn't me." The way he reacted was enough for me to believe him, which led me to thinking that it was another one of my roommates. After a quick discussion, I think everyone agreed that it wasn't any of us, and that reality was pretty chilling to say the least. Just as the man walked out of frame, I heard a door quietly open. Now, this is when I really felt myself tensing up. The distinct creaking sound was the door to the basement opening, and all of us knew it. The time frame from when the figure stepped out of frame to when we heard the sound of the door was enough to confirm it as if it already wasn't. Some stranger was downstairs with me and Dustin, and we had no idea. The video footage continued on for at least another 10 minutes straight, and nothing happened, until the audio picked up again with the distinct sound of the basement door closing shut. Seconds later, the figure walked back in frame, walked through the kitchen, and left through the front door. Everyone was terrified, especially me and Dustin. We both ran down to check for anything stolen or anything out of the ordinary, but everything was exactly how we'd left it. Nothing was gone. The Xbox, TV, our wallets, clothes, everything was still there. We called the police to check for prints, but nothing came of it. All we had was the grainy, black and white footage from the video camera. The door was left unlocked the whole night, which was something we honestly never did. We've always been good about locking up after leaving or entering, but with the weird ding-dong ditch encounter, and then seeing someone in the backyard, whoever was last in obviously forgot to lock it when we came back inside after investigating. I can't be positive if it was the same person who came inside the house, but I definitely have a feeling it was. The most disturbing part of it was what that person was doing in the basement. Since I was in the main room, I know they definitely saw me sleeping on the couch in the middle of the room. I was impossible to miss. The thought of it still gives me chills, and I guess I'll never find out. We haven't had any other instances since that night, and I still live there today. I guess the only positive thing that came out of it was that our video was accepted for promotion by the school, obviously having edited out the weirdo walking around our house in the middle of the night. Maybe something will come of it down the road and I'll find out, but either way, that was by far the creepiest thing I've ever witnessed. A few summers ago, I experienced something that I don't think I'll ever forget. My sophomore year in high school had just ended, so I started hanging out with a group of friends that I hadn't seen since grade school. It actually became a pretty frequent thing, and there were weeks that we'd hang out several nights in a row. Well, on one of these nights, I had just left my friend's house to drive home. He lives on the opposite side of town, so the drive was about 20 minutes to my house, mainly through side streets. About 10 minutes into the drive, I usually turn down a parkway that cuts through the woods. The lighting on this road is horrible, so I always drive slowly with my high beams on. On this particular night, I had just turned down the street heading home. It was around midnight. The AC in my car wasn't working, so I had the windows down, with my music blasting. After a few minutes of being on this road, I spotted something up ahead. At first, I couldn't make out who it was, but as I got closer, I couldn't believe my eyes. There was a 4 or 5-year-old boy standing on the side of the road. I pulled up next to him and put my car in park, then scanned the road for any cars or any sign of a parent or guardian. There was nobody in sight. I left my car running as I got out and approached him. I don't remember exactly what I said, because to be completely honest, I was still stunned by the whole thing. "Hey buddy, is your mom or dad around?" The boy looked at me and shook his head no, so I started realizing that someone abandoned him. Not really sure what else to say, I pulled out my phone and called my friend, unsure of what to do. As the phone was ringing, I heard footsteps approaching from the woods. Before I could even process the noise, 3 people wearing all black clothes and hoods came sprinting out of the woods directly towards me. I didn't hesitate and quickly turned around back to my car. Looking back now, I'm so glad I didn't turn off my car. As soon as I got in, the 3 people were right outside my car reaching in through the open windows, trying to grab me. I managed to manually lock the driver's side door, but couldn't find the button to lock all the doors amidst the panic. One of the people opened the passenger side door and pointed a knife at me. Now, keep in mind, this whole chain of events took place in the span of probably 15 seconds, so I was completely fueled by adrenaline at this point and running on instinct. I threw the car in drive, and I'm glad I did, because it caused the person leaning inside my car to fall out after a few seconds of accelerating. I probably went 60 miles per hour until I was a good distance away from them. Once I got myself together, I picked up my phone, which had fallen under my seat, and my friend was still on the line. He heard the whole thing. After I finished explaining everything to him, I hung up the phone and called the police. I gave them the road and tried to describe the general location it took place in, but unfortunately, they couldn't find anyone. I don't think I slept a wink that night, as I replayed the events over and over in my head. If I had to guess, I think one of the people who attacked me was the parent of the little kid, or at least I hope so. All I can do is speculate, but I just hope he wasn't kidnapped. Either way, I hope the kid is doing alright today. I can't imagine any parent using their kid for such an awful thing, and I hope he's found a better home. I'm currently a 22-year-old college senior about to graduate and start medical school in the fall. This happened when I was in elementary school, so it was over a decade ago. Over the summer, way back then, my mom would send me to the YMCA summer camp. I enjoyed going in every day and being able to hang out with all my friends from school who also went to the camp, but I especially loved one of the counselors, Mike. Mike was always sitting in the same spot when I'd get dropped off in the morning, and he'd always have a huge smile on his face when I'd walk in. We would always sit there and play cards or some other board game in the morning while all the other kids were arriving. Once the day's scheduled activities started, Mike would always be the counselor in charge of my group. He would always seem to be close to me. As a kid, I didn't know that was weird. As I said before, I really liked him, and I thought he was a really cool guy as an 8-year-old. Fast forward a couple years, me, my mom, and my younger sister were out at a state park in the area. It was about a half-hour away from us. We had just gone down there to hang out for the day. We hung out on the playground, walked around trails, and played tag. After some time, my mom said it was time to go back home as it was getting late, so we headed back to the car. When we arrived back at the car, my mom was getting my sister all strapped in and ready for the ride home, and I was getting situated in the back seat as well. Now, our car was obviously in the parking lot, and there really weren't that many people at the park that day. The lot was pretty much empty. So, when I noticed that there was a car parked right next to our car, I thought it was weird, but again, I was a kid, and I didn't really think anything of it. Anyways, my mom continued getting my sister and I ready for the trip back home. Suddenly, the driver's side door of the other car opened up, and out came Mike. My mom recognized him, so she just said hi and continued back to what she was doing. "Do you mind if I take a couple pictures of your kid? He's gotten so grown up and I want to remember this." My mom obviously said, "No, you are not going to do that," and she shut the driver's side door and locked the car. Then we left. As we were leaving, I could see Mike trying to take a photo through the windows of the car. A couple years later, when I was a bit older, my mom told me more details about Mike. My mom, at the time, was pretty high up in a company that pairs kids with adult mentors. Adults would apply to be paired with a kid. So, my mom started telling me about how one day they were going through the applications to be a mentor, and Mike's name popped up. Apparently, someone else had interviewed Mike and recommended him for approval into the system. My mom, on the other hand, essentially vetoed it because she obviously had known Mike from these other experiences, and she got a weird vibe from him that something was really off with him. So finally, we were watching the news at dinner one day a bit later. They started sharing a story about a man who was arrested, and they showed the mugshot of the man. It was Mike. The charge? Thousands of inappropriate images and videos of underage children that he had taken and was in possession of. He was actually caught by Border Patrol because he was acting weird when he was trying to cross into Canada, so they decided to search his car. They found a bunch of it on his computer. They alerted US authorities, who then searched his house, and they found a ton more of it. I am 100% confident that he wanted to add me to that collection. If not for my mom having a great mother's instinct, it might have happened.